Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out on this beautiful evening. My name is Andrea Murray, and I am on the board of directors of the Acorn Renewable Energy Co-op, and am also the faculty advisor to the Solar Decathlon effort at Middlebury College. And Acorn Energy Co-op is really pleased to sponsor this presentation this evening. And it is part of our ongoing series for outreach and educational events for our membership and in the community. I'm not going to tell you very much about the competition or the house or any of that because we have three amazing students here. These are three of our student leaders for the 2013 effort. Ellie Krause, Cordelia Newberry, and Jack Kirby Miller. And they're going to give you all the nitty-gritty details you could possibly want about what is the Solar Decathlon and what is their Solar Decathlon. So thank you very much, and without further ado, I will turn it over to these guys.
Hello, my name is Jack Kirby Miller. I'm a senior this coming fall, and I got involved with Solar Decathlon the moment I got on campus as a freshman, all fresh and excited. I've been involved in the design and the computer programs that help record the early efforts for the house, and I've transitioned into project management and construction role over the last year. I'm an environmental studies and chemistry major.
So like Andrea said, I'm Cordelia Newberry, and I just graduated from Middlebury a couple weeks ago. But I'm sticking around to see the Solar Decathlon through. I joined Solar Decathlon in 2011 during the first competition, like Jack, when I sort of got my feet wet in a bunch of different areas, finance, construction, design, all those kinds of things. And then went to the competition and was just so excited that I wanted to be involved again. And so on this effort, I've done some design work and done some outreach and fundraising and whatnot. And now I'm, like Jack, in a project management role, working on team dynamics and logistics and all that fun stuff.
And I'm Ellie Krause. I'm a rising senior as well, architectural studies major, global health minor. I joined the team in the fall of 2011 when I heard that we were going to be submitting a proposal for the 2013 competition. I joined as a curious sophomore, maybe interested in architecture, and since have spent countless evenings late into the night drawing plans, figuring out details, and I'm now working as design lead for the project. And it's been incredible to see it from conception to a tangible reality right now and be really working on the very intricate final details.
So that was us, but the rest of the team, we're only 3 out of many, many more people to make this effort happen. Throughout the course of the project, we've had about 100 students on and off. We'd say about 40 of those students are sort of our core team, really making this happen. We come from 25 majors and really embrace that broad liberal arts approach. 25 states, 11 countries, so a lot of geographic diversity. 8+ languages, which we're hoping will help us in the competition to give tours in other languages, which would be really exciting. And then we have what we call homegrown engineers. So Middlebury doesn't have professional or pre-professional programs. So our engineers, along with our architects and our fundraisers and whatnot, we're all self-taught. But we highlight the engineers because these students especially take a lot of time and dedication outside of the classroom and outside of the project hours to learn about engineering, mechanical engineering, structural engineering, and it's pretty incredible what these students have accomplished. And then another point of pride for us is that we range the gamut of ages at Middlebury. So we had a freshman on the team who's a team leader as well, and we have people who, like myself, have graduated. And so it's really impressive to see that age doesn't matter on this project and that anyone can participate and be a leader. So like I said, our liberal arts approach is one of our strongest points. Jack's a chemistry major and Ellie's an architecture major, but those two put together, we believe, create a richer product. So we think that our liberal arts critical thinking skills really help us in the competition. And you can see this in 2011 when we won in communications, one of the contests, which I'll speak about in a moment. And we think that that was because we know how to have really intricate, really powerful ideas, and then we know how to share them and make people want to believe in them as well. And we think that that is one of the most important parts of this whole endeavor. So the Solar Decathlon is a biennial event that happens, that the US DOE hosts. It's actually now spread to China and Europe as well, which is really exciting. And it challenges 20 accepted teams to design, build, and exhibit a solar-powered home, all in the same place. So in 2011, we had teams from China and from Belgium come. This year, we have teams from Czech Republic and Austria coming. So they come from around the world, all to the same place, so that hundreds of thousands of visitors can see this solar village and really experience the power of renewable energies. It's called a decathlon because there are 10 contests, and they are meant to judge the home, but also simulate usage of the home, so that there's a subjective sort of interpretation of how well designed is the home, how well will this do on the market, and then there are also contests that challenge the usability of the home, whether or not it would be functional for a family to invest in, or a market of any kind to invest in. So just going down this list, architecture, obviously we have a critique and a scoring from a panel of architects. Engineering is likewise based on a jury of professionals who come through and evaluate our engineering approach. Market appeal is about how sellable is your home to your target client. So for both competitions, Middlebury has picked a small family in New England as our target client. And the panel then evaluates our sellability and feasibility for that client with our home in mind. Home entertainment, this is a really fun contest where we have a dinner party for our neighboring decathletes at the competition and get to use the home again to cook and to watch movies and whatnot, but also get to know the other competitors, which is a really unique experience. Energy balance, where we get that net balance at the end. Did we produce more energy than we use, and are we net positive? Or did we not quite make enough energy and need to pull from the grid a little bit? Appliances, again, stimulating usage in boiling hot water. Comfort zone, keeping our house at an appropriate and comfortable temperature, again, about feasibility of using the home. Affordability is a newer contest where your house is evaluated if it can be rebuilt for $250,000 or less. And that was implemented 2 competitions ago, so that domestic solar architecture and solar energy isn't just for an elite class of people who can afford it. It's for a very wide audience, so that these ideas can spread. Hot water, again, if we can have appropriate amounts of hot water available to our family or our target. And then communications, which again we think is one of the more important contests. Can you make these ideas communicable, and can people believe in them so that they then invest in solar, in sustainable architecture, etc. So Self-Reliance, if you haven't gotten a chance to see it, was our 2011 entry. It now sits on campus as student housing. The 3 of us have all gotten the privilege to live there over the past year and a half. And Self-Reliance was celebrating New England's agrarian tradition and really coming back to Middlebury as a rustic retreat, but with a modern twist. So this was the farmhouse for the 21st century. And it's become it's a absolutely beautiful home, really well designed, really well built. We got 4th place overall, defying all expectations, with 3 outright wins in communications. market appeal because people want to live there, and home entertainment because we know how to throw a party at Middlebury. And now it sits as student housing, but also a great resource for the community and for our fellow peers to come and learn about the competition, but also solar energy. So coming off of self-reliance and the competition, the three of us, Charlie Cotton included in the back there, we're all really excited about doing it again and taking a new approach. So this last November, we submitted a proposal to fill in underutilized space in urban areas. This was our floor plan that we submitted in the proposal, and we really focused on the community that we see in Vermont rather than the beautiful landscape, much like Self-Reliance did. And so with this, we had an idea that we wanted to bring people closer together physically and socially. And with that, we have, over the past year and a half, designed and developed Insight.
So as Cordy mentioned, with Insight, we're aiming to build off of existing communities and strengthen them. So we like to say we seek to reconnect families with their neighbors, consumers with their resources, and people with place. So Insight is designed to fit into an existing community and draw off that in its design and in its presence in the community to create more social connections. And it is designed for our dear Middlebury, Vermont, and many of our concepts and ideals are really drawn from this place and the community that we've been welcomed into as students. This site is on Shannon Street, and we see that as an ideal seam between the college and the community, and a place where we can create connection that's encouraged by solar power, sustainable design, and building practices.
As you can see from this picture, one of the largest challenges of building a solar decathlon house is the idea that in addition to being a highly efficient and sustainable and solar-powered house, it also has to be built twice, in our case, 3 times. So we not only have to build it here in Middlebury, but we have to take it apart and ship it all the way to California, reassemble it in a short period of time, and then after the competition's over, it will be disassembled and returned here to Middlebury. And so because of the great distance between Middlebury College and Irvine, California, early on we focused on transportation and recognizing that limitation and that possibility. And as a team that highly values sustainability, we looked at all of our transportation options and chose the one that provided a bunch of logistical benefits, cost benefits, but especially benefits the environment. As a result, our house is designed to fit inside of 5 standard shipping containers so that it can be transported by rail, saving about using 1/3 of the energy and 1/3 of the carbon that would otherwise be required to ship it by truck to California. It also is much, much more cost effective to do it this way. However, that has been incorporated into our design so that as soon as you walk into the home, you can see the structure of it. So the steel beams that you can see in this slide show 8-foot or smaller sections of the house. And so you see these ribs that hold the panels, which are each designed to be 8 feet and fit into these containers. And so from that sort of architectural element, you can understand how we were designing for the transportation of these constraints, but also thinking about sustainability in all of the different aspects of the project.
So then we had set all of these parameters to design within. The site where we were located in Middlebury, the transportation methods, as well as all of the rules that exist within the competition, and there are a lot of them. And with those, we're designing a very specific house for this specific site because, as mentioned before, it really needs to draw upon the local community to be successful. But we want the concepts we're presenting and the sustainable design that we're coming up with to be accessible to people on a broader scale. So in order to do that, we came up with even more guidelines for ourselves with the 5 points of insightful design. And these come off of universal principles of sustainable design that we believe, when applied, will create a truly sustainable home and help people live a more sustainable lifestyle. The first is live in a walkable community. So that's about siting your home within an existing community fabric where you can walk to your daily needs. Middlebury itself is actually one of the top walkable communities in the US, so great job everyone there. Then we move on to prioritize social space. That's about allocation of space within the home, as well as the way you spend your time outside of the home. So when you're designing a floor plan, for example, you'd want to dedicate more space to a living space where you can share your experience of the home with your family. You can have the kitchen and the living room connected so that while the parents are cooking dinner and the kids are doing homework, everyone is interacting and it's much more communal. You should also have a space that can be shared with your neighbors. As I mentioned, this also lends to discussions on how you're spending your time outside of the home. So rather than having a treadmill, you could go for a run in the local park, get to know people more. The third point is engage the street, and that's an endeavor to create a facade that is friendly and welcoming and familiar within the street that you're building within. So a home that's welcoming has big windows facing the street that people feel comfortable approaching, kind of reinvigorating the front porch attitude. The fourth point is centralize energy systems, and this is a much more technical point. It's referring to bringing the appliances within your home closer together so that you're spending less energy, transmitting energy, and saving materials on, say, wiring or plumbing, keeping it all close together. In addition, this refers to power and creating your own power. So when you're using solar energy, you're keeping it all condensed and more efficient. Our last point is use local materials, and we think that this is very important to boosting the local economy, as well as using materials that are familiar in the context you're working within. And so with those, we've developed insight as per engage the street. We have a home that feels familiar within its context. We wanted it to be opening to the street, but also a little different to engage people's interest. So we didn't want it to look completely standard. The southern facade opens with lots of windows to receive sunlight and have some passive heating in these cold winters. And you can see the form rises in this peak that we like to call our mechanical chimney. That's where all of our energy systems are condensed. But it also really came off of the Vermont vernacular of the chimney or the wood stove, that hearth of the home. And while we can't actually have one for the competition, we have our own 21st century energy hearth that rises to refer to local vernacular of the chimney.
So, building off of the 5 point of prioritizing social space, looking at our floor plan, which is displayed here, you can see that the majority of the space in our home, colored yellow, is actually the public space. So the kitchen, the dining room, the living room have a much larger space, and also from the exterior of the home, the form is very clearly represents this. The lower ceiling in the private space lends a more cozy feel, and also the smaller footprints of the bedrooms compared to a traditional home suggests that the bedrooms are more for sleeping, and that most of your activity and most of your daylight hours spent in the home are not spent in isolation within the bedrooms, but are spent socially in the public space. The tall mechanical chimney that Ellie mentioned serves multiple functions. It, as a single unit, will house all of our mechanical systems: the heating, the ventilation and air conditioning systems, the hot water, and because of its location in the center of the house, all of the appliances and the plumbing fixtures plug directly into it. And this means that you're not transporting water 30 feet or, given a small house, even 10 feet. It goes directly from the source to the sink, to the refrigerator. And in that sense, you're not wasting energy reheating water, and you're also not wasting water while you wait for that hot water to reach the source. Additionally, the chimney metaphor of our mechanical chimney is a little bit more literal. We use our mechanical chimney as a passive solar cooling element. And so the warm air that collects in the top of the house is ventilated out through automated louvers. And replacing that air, the north side is another set of automated louvers, which open when the temperature differential is judged to be correct by sensors, allowing the cool north air from low on the north side to enter through the bottom of the house and cool it. Additionally, talking about passive strategies and reducing the loads on the mechanical systems, we've sized the windows on the southern face very specifically so that they balance energy loads. This means that in the winter, the windows are enough to reduce the amount of heating that you have to do, while in the summer, you don't have to spend an additional amount of energy cooling the house. Another really interesting thing that we've done with the windows is involved with our thick cellulose building envelope. Our envelope is 14 inches thick, which gives us an R value of 48 with a 18-inch roof, which translates to an R value of higher than 60 for the roof part of the membrane. However, on the south face, the windows aren't mounted on the outside edge, as is often traditional, giving you more interior windowsill space. Rather, they're mounted on the interior. And what this does for us in a house that has no natural overhang is that it uses the wall thickness as an overhang. So in the summer, when the sun is highest at noon and the cooling loads would be highest, the house is actually shaded by the window cutouts. And this is expressed architecturally through the southeast corner of the home, which which will end up facing St. Mary's School. In addition to the insulation of our home, we've emphasized a very tight building envelope, and we've used the Huber zip system, which is basically an air barrier that is applied to plywood, so you don't have to deal with penetrations in it like you do with traditional house wrap. And so even though our house comes apart into many pieces, through that system we've been able to achieve a very tight envelope. So air is not escaping, you're not trying to heat the outdoors. The part of our house that speaks most to the point of creating a walkable community is an element we've called the solar path. And what we've done with this element is we've removed the solar panels from their often used place on the roof and mounted them on a superstructure, which does a number of things for us architecturally. As our superstructure called the solar path is designed to be a shelter for a pathway. This is not a pathway that we've pulled out of thin air, but actually came from the site that we were given. Looking at air photos from the 1940s and 1960s, there was a path that connected the college campus all the way down through past St. Mary's School and to Marble Works. And since then, the path has disappeared. And this structural element and functional solar element is a way of bringing that path back and physically reestablishing a connection between the college and the community. It's both an educational tool and a symbol or a gesture towards a community array, which is a way of allowing communities to make solar power affordable, where one person may not have a south-facing roof or may not have the land to install solar panels. By using a community array, you can build a similar structure to our solar path and place it on sidewalks or place it in parks. And so you're generating your energy locally as a community, and you're lowering the upfront cost for each individual who wants to invest in that sort of initiative.
So our fifth point. So our fifth point of insightful design is to use local materials, and that's largely self-explanatory. But we have chosen to do so in two very prominent ways. One of which is our siding, which will be from barn board from a reclaimed barn in Vermont. So that's using a local and historic material. The second is using our flooring, which is from the Middlebury College forests up in Ripton. And so we see an economic sustainability opportunity with using local materials, but also an aesthetic opportunity to celebrate what is already around us and use contextual materials. So this is a video that was produced by a student on our team, and it chronicles the expedition to go and see the wood being harvested.
Hi, I'm Arla Tonzi, and I am a senior Latin American Studies political science major here at Middlebury. On Thursday, November 8th, it was a chilly, overcast afternoon, but Steve Weber, the Middlebury College forester, came and picked us up on campus and took us out through the Vermont countryside and up the mountains to the Breadlow Forest, college-owned forests, and showed us how to harvest the maple trees that we'd be using for our flooring. He showed us how to fell the tree. They chose the trees based on their age and vulnerability, so if they were close to falling. Once they identified a tree, they also looked at where it would fall so that it would not damage other trees or bring down anything else, and also not injure any of us. It was a very rapid process. I kind of expected some calculations or trajectories, and it was more like, okay, we think it should fall here. And they also had to calculate or figure out how the snowcat, which was going to haul the logs out, and then they just told me to get out of the way, and I kind of hid behind some trees with the camera and watched as Steve Weber, the forester, went to work. This process only took a few minutes, and after a final tap, Steve kind of started walking backwards and called out, "Hello!" and the tree fell. And it was quite a sight, and the whoosh and the thump. On the way back from the forest, I remember talking with Steve about logging and how the industry works and interacts with natural systems and cycles. And we both agreed that clear-cut logging is very detrimental to both natural ecosystems and the land as it causes landslide. He was explaining to me the necessity of culling out old trees to provide room for new growth. And it's better not to wait until these trees are dead and useless, but to take them, some of them, when they are robust and usable. In some cases, it makes more sense to look at a certain area of the forest and consider what the natural habitat is, which species should be growing in what proportions, and then use logging as a tool to recreate the natural habitat and to foster the growth of as different species or to maintain the population in their correct percentages. And that was a way I had not thought about forests. And I'm glad that Insight is providing a way to contribute to this maintenance of natural habitats, and also using local materials and keeping the business local with Vermonters who have been very connected to the land for generations. Using this maple flooring is just one of the many ways that Insight embodies local living.
And I'd like to share that our maple flooring was recently installed within the home, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And we're excited to show you all sometime. So now, since we've gone through a few of the main elements of our home, I'd just like to share with you some of the renderings of what our finished home will look like. We create these with a computer program, which is another opportunity for students to learn skills that they otherwise would not at Middlebury. This is a rendering of our living space, the living room. It faces the eastern side, so this wall is actually towards the street. And then the wall, and here's a sketch of some of the furniture that will actually be in the home. Recently, we've been connecting with a lot of sustainable furniture designers, and we're really excited to feature their work in Insight. And then the home opens up more on the southeastern side with the dining nook, and you can see St. Mary's across the way. This is a place where we think we will really engage with the solar path, the street, and create a visual and then proceeding emotional connection with neighbors and people who walk by. We then have the kitchen, which you can see this gray structure. You probably recognize the color from the exterior renderings. That is the central mechanical mod, and we're cladding it with the same siding all around the house so that when you're within the home you can see, oh, okay, all of the appliances are right next to this. They're all connected, using less energy and becoming more efficient. And then as you go deeper into the home, the ceiling drops for a more intimate experience in the private side. And we have this nice hallway culminating in a reading nook, this lovely seat that actually protrudes out of the home. We installed it today, and it looks wonderful. And so it... Music. And we actually, you can see a sketch of, we've moved the shelves around a bit recently, and the great thing about this design build process is that we originally thought, oh, we'll have shelves there. And then as we put the interior walls in, we said, oh no, the shelves would fit much better here. So the design is constantly growing, and we're learning from the home and creating what we think will be most effective. And then this is another exterior rendering. You can see the deck is nice and accessible from the solar path, and it's really supposed to feel open. You can also see the window seat that we were just looking at from the exterior. You can see it protrudes out from the home and will create a great place to sit in the sun, or in light of recent weather, in the rain. And so throughout this process, as you all know, as liberal arts students, we often approach this project as unskilled laborers. And so it's been pretty incredible to connect with local mentors, local craftsmen really, who know what they're doing and can teach us, while also allowing us to make a few mistakes and learn on our own. So here's a picture of our construction manager, Kate Eisman, with Lance Waterman, who's been helping us with carpentry and building the panels that comprise our home, and Lou Knopp, who's been doing all of our metalwork and steel. It's been absolutely incredible to work with individuals such as themselves throughout this process and really gain valuable knowledge in building, also in life in general, as well as make connections within this community that otherwise we wouldn't have access to. I know I personally have been loving getting to know people from around Middlebury and really start to feel more integrated here.
So our project timeline began last winter for push was to have all of the panels completed for the house and get it together on spring break. And we worked with Lance, developing the designs and building the panels as we finished the designs out at his house. It was a really incredible experience working through design details as building a panelized house that doesn't go together once, but comes apart and goes back together to be reassembled. We found that was incredibly complicated. And so the problem-solving process and so Sorry about that. So the problem-solving process we went throughout last winter was really incredible in that we were able to design something, get it to a completed version, and then go out and build it and make adjustments as we went along. It culminated in a great push to get everything together for spring break, which happened in March. Spring break was a week where the campus emptied, and we were all 10 of us stuck around to complete this house and actually see all this work come together. And it was an incredibly rewarding process as we worked through the problems that arose and struggled a little bit and learned over the first 5 or 6 days. We came to Friday and we'd had our foundation assembled, our floor panels put in, but we had just gotten the skeleton on and we had only put up a couple of panels. And then on Saturday, we had this incredible experience where we just hit a groove and all the panels went together, and where there had previously been worries and doubts, it just all felt very empowering to understand that all of this could come together in a day, in 2 days, when we go out to Irvine next fall, this coming fall. So that was really incredible. This is a video of the spring construction and kind of our experiences throughout that week.
So that was a great opportunity for us to dedicate a lot of time to Solar Decathlon without also having to tear away to do our other homework and attend to our other classes at school, which we did have to do. Where are we now? We're again at a time when we can dedicate our full attention to Solar Decathlon. So right now we have 18 students or recent graduates working with us down on Route 125 across from the solar field where our construction site is. And we're dedicated to constructing this house, to continuing the design process, to preparing for Irvine, both our competition materials and logistics of getting us and our house there. And it's a really great opportunity for us to come together as a team and not as 50 to 100 students working disparately on this project. And it's a really special time for us in terms of where we are, but also in terms of the relationships we get to create as a team. And so we work Monday through Friday for 40 hours a week, probably more than that. And it's a big commitment, but everyone on this team wouldn't be here if they didn't want to see this through. And it's been a test of a lot of our capabilities to dedicate to 2 years to a project. But this is the summer to see it all come to fruition, and it's really exciting. So the community involvement, we've kept alluding to how important Middlebury and the people are to us. And we really thrive off of input and suggestions and feedback from people. We started this process by going to places like the Co-op and Carol's and asking what would you like to see in a home in your community? What is the future of domestic architecture? And that really inspired us and really got us where we are now. And Insight is not just for the students who built it, it's not just for the college. We really want it to be a part of this community and a welcomed part of Middlebury, the greater Middlebury. And so the local people are a really instrumental part in that. And we hope that you'll follow us on Facebook, you'll read our blog, you'll look at our Twitter. Those kinds of things are just crucial to our success, just knowing who's out there and who's behind us. And so we hope that you guys will come by. We're going to have tours in early August of the finished house. And we really welcome you guys to come through and ask us questions and engage with the house. But we also hope that you'll just keep up with our progress and so that we know that when we come home, we're coming home to a community that's just as excited about it as we are. So with that, if you guys have any questions for us, we'd love to answer them.
Is that house going to stay there by the school as they know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, when it's recited, that's its permanent site. It's on a college lot. Right now it's filled with a lot of brush and half of a parking lot, but we're going to put the house there, and that's where it'll be.
Yeah, about approximately 20% of your total budget was a professional assistant. Is there a breakdown for that? Is a lot of it engineering, or some of it just something especially like transportation or wiring?
We've had a lot of help from a lot of professionals. We've worked with Greg Sellers on the structural engineering. With Wayne, Wayne Nelson has given us a lot of help with our mechanical and some of our electrical systems, as well as professional help like Lance and Lunab, who have been guiding us both through the construction documentation and the actual construction and movement of the house. Does that answer your question?
Well, so professional assistance does or does not include the skilled labor that took the facility building?
It does include this skilled labor.
So in that we have a breakdown of our structural engineer, who we do have a big contract with, who will, because we do need stamped drawings that only a professional licensed engineer can produce. So that is an example of a service contract.
Well, I was thinking heating and cooling. That's a pretty big chunk of your project.
It is, yeah. And so our one of our engineers has learned from energy modelers and mechanical engineers such as Wayne Nelson, who works up in Burlington, to learn as much as he can from them. And then we do also employ local mechanical engineers to help us with the installation and approval process of that.
So we're not only paying for services, we're also paying for a more mentorship role.
In every RFP request for quotes that we send out, we include a mentorship aspect. And so a lot of our professionals that we work with are chosen specifically because they can build a good relationship with the team and help us learn what we need to learn in order to understand what we're doing and how to get the most out of the process.
I would add they're not just building professionals. There are professionals who are teaching students how to make a website. There are professionals who are helping them learn how to develop and produce and edit videos. There are professionals who are helping with the cooking aspect, and so there's a lot more to this than just the house itself and constructing it. I also believe in that are also some of the costs incurred for faculty to be involved and to help support the project.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, so this team that's going out to Vermont, how large is that?
We will have 60 different students over the course of 4 weeks in rotations of 1 week each, and with a smaller group staying for the entire term to provide consistency. So I hope that answers your question.
You have a month to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of that month, the breakdown is 10 days of hard construction, about 2 weeks of tours and competition, and then 5 days to pack it all up.
Yeah, this is the solar decathlon, and I'm curious whether or not the solar stuff, which is basically off the shelf now, it's kind of commodity,
Yeah.
and your focus is more on these other elements of, let's just say, design, or whether or not there's still solar advances that people are trying to figure out or invent as part of the competition.
So a big part of the solar decathlon is it's an incentive for companies to develop new products, and so you'll see a wide array of different solar panels at the competition, and there's a certain sense of comparing them between how the different houses work. And from that end, you can see in some of the design decisions the way that the solar panels have evolved in cost and in efficiency, where in 2011 it made the most sense to go with a solar thermal system, which was considered, it was and still is considered a really efficient system. In 2013, we've actually not gone with solar thermal, and we're actually heating our water electrically and using an on-demand heating system to provide a little bit of a different incentive for hot water usage. So basically the way it works is that while it's on, it's using more energy, but it's not wasting energy while it's off. And we're supplementing that with a smaller tank that's actually, because of the cost effectiveness and the efficiency of the solar panels, makes financial and sustainable sense.
To add to that, we also, one of the rules of the competition is that you can't use something that's not on the market. So the solar panels we are using must be available to any of the teams who would wish to use them. But we do think that we are contributing to innovation within solar power with the solar path. No one's done something like this before, other than maybe a solar bus stop or a solar car park. So we think that we're advancing solar technology and that we're making it more accessible to people to implement in contexts where they don't want to build a new home and their roof doesn't face south, but they do maybe have a sidewalk or a community garden where they could put a solar path.
I was just curious, since you're using panels and you're building and taking down this house more than once, if you have thought at all to be able to remanufacture the same house and be able to transport it wherever it needs to go from here, or just even transporting more around Middlebury so that you're duplicating all these efforts that you've done instead of only doing the one-off, which is very expensive.
What we've found through you're talking about multiple houses? Or
taking the house that you've designed now and spent all this time to figure out how to put it together and take it apart, to be able to recreate this house again using panelization and design forms that you have, and then build it somewhere else in Middlebury or transport it to some other place and build it.
So
that
taking
you
it on
can
tour?
make use of all that information you've come up with and not just have a one-off house, which is very expensive, and this would be a way to recoup some of the financial costs of creating the first one?
Well, actually, so when we enter into the Solar Decathlon, we sign a contract with the DOE that they will allocate $100,000 to each team for their project. And in exchange, at the end of the competition, all of our documents are public property. And so we have to get up to a certain level of documentation. A lot of that is incurred in our project costs of going through our structural engineer, our contractors, or whatnot, to create those documents. But that then become public property that anyone could recreate and reproduce. For self-reliance, we've had someone contact us and say, we want to reproduce self-reliance. How might we go about it? And we can say that we've put in a lot of backlog work on creating the drawings, getting the structural approval, getting the mechanical and electrical approvals. That's all that work we've been doing for a year and a half. And now you can take what we've done and reproduce it for around $250,000. And those documents can also be a starting point for a contractor to perhaps take a look at them, understand them, and then recreate the house without having to panelize it, because that is more expensive. And that's a caveat or that's just the situation we're in with the competition, is that it's panelized. But if someone were to recreate it, they wouldn't have to panelize it. So we've just done a lot of preparation work to have anyone interested build this home on their own.
But would Middlebury maybe build another one, or would you or Vernacular try to build another one and maybe sell it to recoup some money? Or you're not allowed to do that?
I think if there was someone who was very interested in the house, we might consider it. One of the really important things about Insight is that it's designed for its specific site. All of the specific layouts and the way the windows face and the porch orientation and the entry orientation and a lot of the other aspects of the home, including its form itself, are derived from the site where we were given. And so we feel that it fits really well in its home site.
But if someone wanted to reproduce it, we would be so excited.
Yeah,
that
obviously.
would be a huge compliment.
We wouldn't say no.
But we also want people to feel inspired to take the principles we've developed and create their own Insight, their Insight 2.0 for wherever they may want to build it.
Your diagram illustrations now appears that you're utilizing a living roof. And
Yes, we have a green
speak
roof.
More to that, and as well as, is there any design plan, with the solar path and the living roof in the sense of decision making, where most conventional solar is on roofs, and why you may have gone away from that?
Sure. So we decided to take the solar off the roof, as you know, for a more flexible approach that could be adapted by people in various contexts. And that opened the roof up not only to be oriented so that the southern facade of the home is open to receive natural sunlight, but it also, so the form of the house was opened up, but the space on the roof now became free, and we thought it was a perfect opportunity to showcase another sustainable technology that's kind of on its way in the green roof, which there actually aren't many in Vermont. So this is a fantastic opportunity to test it out and prove that it can work. In addition, we think that it's just a beautiful way to reflect the site itself. Our site is sloped. There's a really steep slope down the site, and it's actually facing out towards the mountains, and you see the rolling hills and the steeple coming up. And we like to poetically think that our roofs speak to that and the natural forms that surround us.
I was really surprised and pleased to see that your walking path there. And I had looked into maybe building a carport. And I was told that having panels that were fixed wouldn't be as good as having ones that track the sun. And I was looking for a solution to have sort of the idea of a garage, a little bit of protection, but also that you have and had an electric car and I'd like to charge it using, solar panels. And so I was just wondering, is that true? Or, I mean, I would love to have some sort of protection and, just, the driveway is just sitting there and if it's very hot, it would be nice to just have that sort of carport idea. So I'd be curious to know what you think about that.
I think the thing to say there is that tracking solar panels are more efficient. But when you're looking at the overall way you're using the resources, using it as a carport or as a solar path, they're multifunctional. And so you're gaining value from the alternative uses to it. And also, if you fix them at the correct angle, you're still getting a really efficient solar array. And you're avoiding some of the capital involved in the tracking system and that kind of complicated machinery.
Yeah, another thing that we kind of value as a team is simple solutions. So tracking system can malfunction, can break, can stop tracking for whatever reason. But so this is sort of a more fixed, reliable solution that we think is maybe not as technologically out there, but that is more reliable.
Also, if you're interested for some in some inspiration, the solar company we're using is called Lumos Solar. Its headquarters are in Colorado, and they actually have a carport with their solar panels above.
I've contacted them.
Wonderful.
Yes.
They're beautiful panels.
Yeah.
So the panels we're using are actually glass panels with the cells spaced out so that light filters between them, and it creates this beautiful dappled effect that's reminiscent kind of walking through the woods. So it's a great opportunity to create a nice space.
Could you tell me how the natural roof actually works as a roof? What plants are you growing up there?
So we're using, I'm still using Library? Or we recently...
We're currently discussing which company we're using with two companies who are interested in donations. So we're either using Green Roof or Live Roof, and there are systems you can purchase with a tray systems that you can place on the roof. They come with plants that have already begun growing, and so you can put them on there and help them thrive. We're using sedum, which doesn't need to be watered often and is pretty tough. And there's also a drainage system underneath the roof so that you don't have water buildup. In addition, it'll actually serve to insulate our home a bit. When the water drains off the roof, it'll hit a gutter system. So it's all integrating it within the existing roof. It's pretty simple.
One of the great things about sedum is it is a very hardy plant in the northern climates like Vermont, where you can, on a lot of green roofs, you can have an almost subalpine environment because of the winds that tend to sweep over them. And so a sedum, which grows low and grows thick and grows hardy, is a really good option for that.
I just wanted to comment and add a piece to your question earlier about the adjustability and the trackers. Students for a long time had a solar pathway that was adjustable, and they were planning to adjust it for Irvine and for Vermont because the two kind of optimal angles vary. And then coming back to Vermont, it would be adjustable in the seasons to be at a better angle to hopefully produce more solar energy. They did calculations after calculations after calculations and finally came to the conclusion that, finding the angle in the middle was the best angle of all, and that the difference was so minimal that it really wasn't worth the additional investment in trying to have a mechanical system that could move.
Yeah, since you guys are liberal arts majors, I have to ask this question. Okay, so from a sociological perspective there, you're talking about increasing the utilization of the public space. you know, but at your age, how would you feel sitting in the living room with your grandparents watching Law and Order?
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that we've talked a lot about within the team and to others about pushing the envelope and bringing a new idea to this competition.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that, you're right, we're not used to, particularly in our generation right now.
I mean, a lot of it goes the other way.
Right, and that's exactly that we want to push people back into these relationships by providing an attractive, comfortable, familiar, usable space that sort of supersedes this societal trend that we see. If you go into self-reliance, it's this exact, relatively the same square footage, but everyone who walked into that home, the first thing they said was, I want to live here. Kids, adults, the next generation up and down. It's everyone wanted to be in that space because of the space. And I think that the size of it didn't, and the proximity to other spaces didn't really register as a negative, but as a...
No. But
Yeah.
I'm just concerned that you're going to, this whole thing with multi-generational families sitting there with their iPhones and their Bluetooth headsets watching their own program.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're hoping that we'll see the kids.
Yeah, I guess.
Right,
Then
so
they look up.
the orientation of our home, is not directed towards, of our living room is not directed towards the TV, and obviously you can change your couch around, but it's the idea that, as romantic as it might sound, that doing your homework and playing a board game is just as enjoyable because that's the space that you have in front of you. And so, we're not expecting necessarily everyone to walk in there and immediately fall into place, but little by little have a house be a vehicle to also change social interactions. And just by the nature of having a very lovely space to be in, make it fun to sit next to your grandmother and watch Law and Order. You're right.
Already, by the way.
Is the board game group at Middlebury College now? No.
Yeah. There's everything.
How's the interaction between you as students working together and say your designated majors, and then what you ended up doing, like in the sense, was a math major doing a lot of the technical work, or vice versa, doing some of the citing type things, and say a psychology major doing more technical work or things like that. How does that seem to have worked out for your experience?
Very well. One of the people I'm most proud of is Ari Latanzi, who was in the Maple Harvest video. She's actually a Latin American Studies major, and she's become our solar engineer. So it's a huge opportunity for people who are in all sorts of majors to explore other interests. And the thing is, it's really, it gets you. It grabs you, and you can't stop learning, and you get really excited. And we all bring unique perspectives to this project where, Jack is a chemistry major, but he's also learned so much and knows so much about building a house. And one of my friends is a religion studies major, and so sometimes I'll talk to her about, okay, well, what do you think we're saying with this message? Or we can all learn from it and contribute, definitely.
Been looking at the renderings and thinking about the houses I've lived in, it seems like they're not much in closets. It may not be that in cabinets. I think of our kitchen and the stuff that we have that we enjoy. I'm curious whether or not any of these competition homes are actually being lived in by families in a regular neighborhood versus like what's happening here, it's students. That's a transient population compared to people who have lived there 10 years and have 20 years worth of stuff maybe if they're trying to.
So I'd like to answer that question from two perspectives. The first one being the second part of the question, which is, yes, there are houses that have been built and that have been lived in by families, one of which, Parsons from 2011, was actually a Habitat for Humanity home, and it became a center of sustainability for that neighborhood. The second side of this is we actually got a lot of comments about the amount of storage space, and we have recently adapted our design to incorporate more storage space on the interior, which was a really exciting moment that happened over the last couple of weeks.
This past week.
Yeah.
2 days ago. Of all things design. No, I think though that there is also this hope that like this is a vehicle for social change. It's also a vehicle to have us make a statement about, you know, the amount we have. And it's a balance between stuff that we do need, like living in Vermont, you need winter clothes that take up a lot of space. That's not a frivolous thing. But, you know, the parameters of the competition, which give you the opportunity to build 1,000 feet at maximum, also gives us an opportunity to sort of make a statement about, you know, maybe we want to provide enough for your winter clothes and your summer clothes and your pots and your pans, but we also want to encourage you to live a little bit lighter, so maybe not have a Wii and a Nintendo, and, you know, sort of rethink not only how you live, but what you have with you.
I'd like to ask about the energy balance you're seeking to have be net zero. Does that include only the electrical, or does it include heating the house in the winter as well?
So part of the Solar Decathlon project is that all of the appliances have to be electrical. They're actually really strict to the point where batteries and remote controls have to be registered before you arrive. And so, yes, the solar panels over the course of a year will cover the cost of heating and cooling the home.
I want to know if you had access to the green roof.
No. The college doesn't permit access at those heights without adequate, you know, infrastructure. And we've talked a lot about, you know, in the original stages, making a porch and making a seating area up there. And it got very complicated and a little bit convoluted. And so I think that, you know, I guess as college students, I'm sure someone will climb up there at some point, but it's not an openly accessible spot.
How are you going to maintain it?
So seeding will maintain itself naturally using natural rainwater. It doesn't take a lot of water, and it's with the live roof or green roof trays. As soon as you pull out the barriers that separate them, they'll grow together and form a living mat and be immediately established. So it's a really low maintenance system. Yeah.
What if you have to weed it?
You don't have to.
Well, you will. I mean,
Maybe you don't care.
lots of seeds will fly through the air and settle on that roof, and many of them might sprout. And you
Pick
need
your
balls.
toes out.
At that point, you know, I'm sure that facilities on campus, you know, a ladder or something like that, if it were to get to that point. But we do like the idea of the live roof being self-maintaining and just letting nature sort of dictate how it grows, because you know, unless it gets particularly unruly or something like that, you know, I think we're pretty low maintenance about it.
I also would love to see some dandelions up there. They look beautiful.
You will.
Yeah.
And we see this as partially an experiment in green roofs. There's the Atwater green roof that exists on our campus right now, and it's certainly had its fair share of problems, and we've got students working through it and, you know, trying to figure out what the best solutions are. So part of this is an experiment and saying, okay, we're putting sedum up here, we're implementing this system, let's see how it works. If we end up having to revise, then that's the case, and we're learning from it. And
Any issues with rodents and bugs? Flies,
not that we're aware of, no.
we'll find out.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
If the competition limits house sizes to 1,000 square feet, how's affordability, you know, judged? Because it can't be on dollars per square foot, but that's just how it's absurd.
It is, yeah. The affordability contest is judged full points at $250,000, and then a sliding scale beyond that to deduct points. So that does come down to $250 a square foot. The project cost also incorporates transportation to the competition.
Yeah, I can see some some costs of disassembly and transportation,
Right.
all the upfront engineering work, 20% of your budget's professional.
Right.
So that's what it's coming in at, is $250 per square foot for a house?
Yeah.
Well, this also includes costs for high-end technologies. The home itself would cost a lot cheaper to produce also because since we're designing this home to come apart and be put together so many times, we have a lot of extra structure. We also have extra structure because it will be a public exhibit home for those 10 days, and that comes with it. With that come many extra structural needs.
Including seismic code for the state of California, which would otherwise not be necessary.
Another sort of economic end of it is that a net zero home will save the homeowner that annual energy bill. In 2011, we calculated that at saving around $2,000 a year, which doesn't necessarily make up for the square footage allocation, but it's an investment in with the return.
I think it's important to note that this is an exhibit home. It's a prototype, and most people don't build a home that's 1,000 square feet. If you were to enlarge the home, the cost per square foot would go down significantly because the most expensive components of the home are in this tiny home: the kitchen and the mechanical systems, and to some extent the bathroom. You won't have to reproduce all of those elements if you were to build a 1,500 or 1,200 square foot home. So it's not realistic to judge this home on a cost per square foot, rather to look at, each house individually.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in this project?
I think one of the biggest challenges I've faced is learning about team dynamics and how to keep track of 100 students, and to have us at a very interesting time in our lives of learning and growing and sort of going into adulthood, have to face such real world demands, work with professionals on their schedule, on their budget, work with a budget. I think that for me, the biggest challenge and adjustment has been the juxtaposition of a very real world project in the midst of a non-real world situation like college.
It also just catching up with the other schools that are often technical institutions, getting that knowledge as fast as we can so that we can keep up and hopefully win. And also for me personally, as Cordy mentioned, team dynamic, design by committee has been a very interesting experience. I've definitely learned a lot about how people work. But it's also created something more beautiful than any of us could have created on our own, because we bring all of these unique and incredible perspectives.
What's your challenge?
I think the biggest challenge for me was trying to coordinate between the multiple aspects of the project, who especially in the early stages and the middle stages, each had their own very distinct perspective. Kind of trying to coordinate the needs of the communications team and what they needed, and not only their dates, but their perspective on what was important with those focusing on design, procurement, especially the way that design feeds into construction, design feeds into procurement so that the construction continue to move forward. And dealing with those sort of relationships was a really big thing to learn, and to be able to organize that and understand, how things need to happen and how to negotiate between the different groups and facilitate that kind of work was really large.
One of our biggest challenges right now is getting our windows, which are currently stuck at the border. So
It's actually our doors, which are still on the boat.
Every day is a new challenge.
But it doesn't sound local.
No, you caught us. We are actually getting
But
windows.
it's
No, exactly. Yeah, this was the same thing in Self-Reliance too, where the windows were from Germany. Our windows are from Lithuania, and that's a statement on where the U.S. window industry is with their efficiency standards. And as Andrea pointed out yesterday, they are lagging behind in their logistical standards to America. But in terms of performance, going abroad is worth that investment monetarily and environmentally, and perhaps straying from our message just like that.
It's
I just wanted to say, could you talk about the challenge of fundraising from this effort?
so our project, our entire budget is, the burden is placed on the students to fundraise by the end of the project. So we've been working really hard as a team, providing materials and working with our fundraising team and working with the college as well. And we have a team of fundraisers who's been working really hard to raise the $1.2 million of the overall budget. And we recently passed the halfway mark, which was really exciting. 3/4 mark. Awesome. So we recently passed the 3/4 mark, which is a really incredible milestone, but it's been a push for the last full 18 months to get that and make sure that it keeps rolling forward.
There have been so many advances in solar technology, and I'm just wondering, you said between the 2011 competition and this one, and sort of changed the type of solar used. And I'm just wondering, what direction do you think it's headed in? Because I've been sort of waiting to do solar until it sort of shrinks down a little bit. Remember those big dish things for TV? They're like huge, and now they're this big. And I'm waiting for that same sort of thing to happen with solar. Because originally I was thinking of, my roof, it's a slate roof, and I just didn't want to cover it with solar panels. And I'm just wondering what materials, I read daily about advances with graphene and all sorts of substances. And I'm just wondering, do you have any insights on the direction solar will be going?
Well, it's certainly becoming more efficient and more affordable as individuals as well as organizations continue to invest in solar and support these companies. They have the strength to do more research and development and make it accessible to more people. It's also, you'll find fascinating things about how solar energy is developing. There's this one system called Solar Ivy, where the cells are actually oriented like leaves of ivy so that they can receive light as a plant would. I've also read about solar panel paint, where chips are embedded in paint that you can paint on things. I read about a solar hot air balloon. So it's definitely, people are experimenting and getting creative and trying to figure out the best ways. So, it's becoming more innovative, it's becoming more efficient, and likewise more affordable. So I think we'll get down to what you're looking for.
Also, I think that the solar path is hopefully going to spark people's attention in Irvine, because it's a way for people to invest in solar like many individual families haven't been able to invest or hadn't thought of investing before. So the solar path came out of a need to orient off of the street grid, because it wouldn't line up well. So we needed a way to not use our roof. So we created a new structure. So likewise, someone who wouldn't want to reconstruct their roof or make a new home to accommodate solar now has an idea of how to accommodate solar in a less expensive way. Less expensive not necessarily because of the technology, but because of the infrastructure associated with the technology. So this cost of solar will come down when enough people invest in it, enough government funding has gone into it perhaps, but also thinking of unique ways to reduce costs, such as creating an external structure or investing in a community array that can have lower upfront costs as well.
those approaches, I think, are a great future for solar without relying and waiting on new technology.
So I've seen them use it in parking lots, for
Right.
example, just to keep parking lots cooler, easier to plow, and so on. And, you know, just to cover some areas, so you can park in the shade.
Yeah. Exactly.
A new part of our solar path that we're recently developing is actually integrating a hydroponic system that will be hanging from the solar path, and that will actually be a hanging garden of sorts where you can grow food. So we're trying to think of new ways that solar can be used in addition, well, that these structures can be used, but also that solar can be integrated into larger systems.
And I think that that's one of the really important things about the solar industry at this moment in time is that as the industry as a whole, the technology as a whole improves and efficiencies get better, you're still looking at all the different options. There's no one clear winner in terms of efficiency. You need to look at your particular installation and understand what kind of some of the side benefits are, whether it's using a solar panel as a form of shade, or you know, maybe if you've got a reflective roof, a bifacial panel that can collect energy from the backside as well is a beneficial technology. And so it's really, the variety really gives you a lot of advantages over different kinds of competition.
I noticed in, I think 2 of the images of your show, a wind turbine. Do you use wind? Is your wind?
That's the nearby turbine that belongs to the college.
Okay, so that's not.
No.
That's not part of our project.
For the
But we like that we can feature it in our image.
Yeah, for the competition, everything has to be solar. In 2011, when we came back, we also took advantage of geothermal that was below grade or below the ground. But for the competition, everything's expected to run on solar. So, yeah, but it's a nice opportunity.
If you're so heavily reliant on solar, and you heat your electrically, I'm sorry, how water all comes electrically, and you're gonna wind up being zero or net zero grid or net zero,
Positive.
well, whatever, but you're not gonna, you know, throughout the course of the year, you're not gonna use it'll balance out what you take from the grid, which you give the grid. And there's night, how do you take a shower at night and wash dishes at night? I mean, do you have a lot of battery power? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Well,
So we're grid tied, which means that over the nighttime hours when you're using electricity, it's actually coming from the electrical grid. Yeah, and then you reproduce, or you feed it back in the day, so you're
So
actually.
you have no batteries associated with the house at all?
No batteries associated with it. It makes, for installations within existing communities where you already have the infrastructure for grid tie, it makes a lot of sense to do grid tie. When you get farther out, batteries start making a lot more sense. But it also is dependent on the energy infrastructure that you're dealing with, and kind of the demand and the pricing structures as well.
So we're drawing